Hello, and I'm going to jump onto some Golden Visa basics first of all, for those that are just starting out on their Golden Visa journey. Bring you up to speed as to how to qualify for the program, what's involved, what the process is, the timeline. I'll bring you up to speed on of course, the investment criteria as well, which if you've been tracking the news of the Golden Visa for a little while, you'll know that last year was very turbulent as far as what was happening with the closure of the program, ultimately then the change of the investment criteria for the visa as well. Unfortunately, no changes since last month, be pleased to know. I do have some good news to share since last month as well, some recent news that's come out over the last couple of weeks. I'll cover off briefly around a lot of questions I'm getting at the moment about using retirement accounts as a way to fund the Golden Visa investment, which seems to be certainly more and more common now. So we'll touch on that briefly. I'll bring up to speed on the how to kind of speed up the process of getting the visa as well, and things you can do to get yourself on the way. And any general questions, I suppose. Yeah, I'll touch on, like I said, the investment criteria. But yeah, hopefully you'll get loads out of the event this evening, and we'll jump onto the Q&A at the end. So yeah, without further ado, just to introduce myself, my name is Jason Swan. I'm a senior partner for Holborn Assets, who are actually a wealth management practice now, one of the largest wealth management practices in Europe. And by day, I'm a fully qualified and regulated financial planner. I've lived in Portugal now for the past 3 years. I'm down in the south, in the best part of Portugal, down in the Algarve. And previous to Portugal, I was in Spain and in Malaga for 5 years as well. And yeah, Holborn, yeah, like I said, by day, we are a financial practice, and I spend the majority of my time helping clients structure their income and their assets in line with becoming a new tax resident of the country, or of course, just changing the tax residency generally. But about 6 years back, we opened Holborn Passport, and Holborn Passport is a service or a part of the Holborn Group, which is dedicated to help our clients achieve residency and citizenship by way of investment. So far now, we have done over 10% of the world's Golden Visa applications for Portugal. Myself personally now having done over, I've done over 150 applications just in the last 2 years alone. So very well versed on what's involved and the process. I always have my ear to the ground as to any changes or any new investment opportunities that arise to share, of course, accordingly. But we offer a full hold your hand service from beginning to end, right from the initial outset of talking through investment options and making sure that you qualify for the program. And we'll help us get up the tax numbers set up in Portugal, the bank account that you'll need in Portugal. We'll help collect all the documents needed for your application. You have myself and my team that helps manage all these different moving parts within the process, including, of course, the acting lawyers, dealing with your biometrics appointment with AIMA, and yeah, anything else that comes up, of course, including things like tax representation as well, which is necessary if you have an asset in Portugal. But all in all, yeah, like I say, we're very experienced, and we have a 100% success rate on those applications as well. Please do type my name into Google if you haven't already. Have a look at Holborn Assets, have a look at myself personally, take a look at some of our reviews, and I'm sure you'll have peace of mind from your online research. So that's what we do, and today we're going to cover off the Portugal Golden Visa. It's not the only program that we can provide advice on. If you do want to explore other ways into Europe, such as the Spanish Golden Visa, which sadly might be coming to an end in September. The Spanish Golden Visa is odds on at the moment to finish in September. We don't know that for sure. Of course, you would have heard me talk about this Portugal Golden Visa program closing many times last year, ultimately to see it live to see another day. Of course, with some changes, but at the moment, it does look like Spain's going to finish, but it is currently open. Of course, there is Greece, there is Malta as well, all of which have different criteria. Internationally, of course, many different programs to explore. So if you're not necessarily hooked onto Portugal, or maybe just looking for a route into Europe or just somewhere new, for whatever reason it may be, feel free to ask. Of course, tonight we're going to focus just on the Portugal program. Speaking of which, so you may already have a pretty good idea of what program is about. But to cover some basics, the Golden Visa is the most popular investment route to Europe through any of the EU states. It's been around now since 2012, and it is basically a VIP pass to live or work in Portugal without any restrictions. And after 5 years have passed, you then could apply for a Portuguese passport, which you will know is a European passport, which will allow you to live in any of the European states. So it's kind of like getting 27 passports all at the same time. And that's kind of the treasure at the end of the rainbow, as it were. But in the meantime, for those initial 5 years, you can, of course, live in what is if not one of the nicest places in the world, where I am. But yeah, it's like I say, it's the most popular program to coming into Europe, generally for a couple of reasons. But the main one being is that it is one of just two countries in the whole of Europe where you can maintain a visa and get a European passport without having to move your tax residency to Portugal. You don't need to move to Portugal to get the visa. You can stay exactly where you are. And in 5 years from now, you can have a passport ready for yourself and your family should you decide to move to Portugal at some point in the future. So it works as a particularly good plan B or future kind of retirement plan, maybe something for children if you want them to study in Europe, for example. But yeah, you can have all of the above without actually physically having to move over to Portugal at the moment. The only other country that has a kind of a no minimum stay, if you like, is Malta. But the investment criteria for Malta is over twice as much capital. So Portugal continues by quite some way to be the most popular entry to Europe, if you will. So yeah, that's the big plus. There is kind of a minimum stay, but it's only 2 weeks. You've got to be in Portugal for 2 weeks every 2 years to maintain the visa. That's it. So bad news is you've got to have a holiday at least in Portugal. It's really not that bad, but as long as you do that, then yeah, in 5 years from now, you can look forward to getting a European passport. So again, any questions on that, just drop them in. Of course, we'll cover this more as we go through. As a Golden Visa holder, there are many benefits, apart from, of course, living in an incredible part of the world. But also, as a resident, you get access, first of all, to European healthcare. I have some clients which literally do it just for their healthcare, compared to some parts of the world where healthcare can be very expensive or not particularly to a great standard. The Portuguese healthcare system is one of the best rated in the world. And as a resident, you have default access to the healthcare system. Similar to the education system as well, whether it be for yourself or for children, whether it be now or in the future. Again, the ability to study in Europe is a big plus for some. Other than that, there used to be, Portugal has been seen to be quite a tax favorable part of the world. Up until last year, there was a tax incentive for new residents for the first 10 years that they live here called NHR. That offered kind of tax-free income on income such as dividends, rental income, and pension income was capped at just 10% as well. So it was really good incentives. It worked wonders since it was announced back in 2009. It was designed to attract the world's kind of leading talent to Portugal, which it certainly did. And unfortunately came to an end, like I say, last year. You do still have a chance to apply for NHR on the basis that you did start your journey to Portugal before the end of 2023. But if you didn't, then that now is unavailable. There are still some tax incentives. There is NHR 2.0 to be announced, which is going to be more tailored towards those that are still working, whether employed or self-employed. You may be able to get a flat rate of income tax of just 20%, which is pretty good. Other than that, not a lot of incentives for retirees by comparison to previous, but there are ways of still structuring your income and your assets to get a significant reduction on the standard rates of tax in Portugal. So I'm not going to cover that a lot this evening, but of course, for any tax planning or financial planning, please do ask any questions. I'm happy to run through those with you. And I can also share, of course, my tax guide for Portugal, which is really good bedtime reading, by the way. Really exciting stuff. But other than that, yeah, so that's all included within the Golden Visa, and of course the minimum stay only 7 days per year. I thought I'd throw a map in this evening as well, because I was saying the other day, it's surprising how many people I speak to that want to do the Golden Visa, literally have already decided they're going to Portugal, and they've never actually been to Portugal. I find it incredible. Literally, I'd say 50% of people that are doing the Golden Visa have never even been to the country, which is incredible. So here's a little geography lesson. This is everything that you need to know, just in case. But I'm down here in the south, down in Albufeira, where typically the world is a little bit warmer. The sea is a little bit warmer. It's very quite a relaxed standard of living, if you like, quite laid back. It's quite a nice contrast actually to work. You know, I can go home and have a completely different relaxed lifestyle. But of course, if you want to go to more city centre into Lisbon, of course, the capital, much more cosmopolitan, a lot more going on in Lisbon, again, incredible part of the country. And then the other main hub, if you like, is Porto, up towards the north. Now, unlike some countries, you can get to the top, to the bottom of the country in about 5, maybe 6 hours. It's not a huge country. And you're not going to go too far wrong. You know, I don't think no matter where you end up, you may even decide to go inland. If you don't want to see any people at all, you might want to jump right to the middle of Portugal and have maybe your own farm or your own retreat, maybe. You know, it's ultimately your personal preference. If you're anything like me, you'll probably end up starting somewhere in Portugal and finishing somewhere completely different once you understand a little bit more about the country and where you want to settle. Just be mindful that when you buy a property in Portugal, there's quite a lot of tax that you pay. So you don't want to kind of jump into the country, buy the first house that you see, and then decide you want to move somewhere else 6 months later. It's best to take your time buying a property before you kind of put the anchor down to make sure you're happy with the area. And there's not real risk of wanting to sell and move again, in the foreseeable future. Ultimately, you don't want to be paying those taxes each time. But take your time with it. Like I say, you've got a pretty good choice no matter where you end up. I'm slightly biased towards the south, but hey, everyone is different. Of course, you have the Portuguese islands as well, like Madeira. It's an incredible place, very picturesque. Yeah, whether you move there or have it as kind of a little weekend staycation, I shall leave up to you. Now, coming on to past geography, back to numbers, back to maths. I never did very well in geography in school. I did very good in maths, not geography. But coming back to the numbers side of things and the technicalities. So the investment criteria, as it stands to qualify for the Golden Visa, comes under 5 categories, and it changed at the end of last year. Property investment was the most popular by quite some way, the most popular route to get the visa up until the end of 2023. As a route to try and curb increasing house prices in Portugal, the government did remove that from the criteria, but it did remain open, which we didn't expect up until literally November last year. And there's still 5 routes to go down. And the 5 routes, first and foremost, is you can set up a business in Portugal if you wish. And if you create 10 jobs for the local Portuguese, the government will gladly give you a golden visa. If you wish to make a donation, again, happily we'll give you a golden visa if you want to donate 500,000 or 250,000 to the National Arts. Strangely, I don't do a lot of applications for the donations. I think, and I don't think I've actually ever done a single one, strangely. But nonetheless, if you're feeling generous, you can qualify with a donation. More often than not, I'd say probably 95% of applications now are done with a view of keeping the money, that I'm sure you've worked very hard for, and of course, seen it grow whilst qualifying for the permission to live in Portugal as well. The first investment option is to choose a qualifying investment fund or venture capital fund that meets a certain criteria for the visa. To do that, you need 500,000 euros going into one of those qualifying investments. And the second investment option highlighted here in green is to invest into an existing Portuguese company of some kind that will create jobs with your investment or maintain existing jobs directly as a source of your investment, again, from 500,000 euros. There are many routes. I'm going to cover these in quite some detail this evening, but yeah, options 4 and 5 are the investment routes, options 2 and 3, the donation routes, and option 1 is setting up a business. And unless you already plan to set up a business, it's unlikely to be something that you would do simply for the reason to get a visa. Of course, it's going to take a lot more involvement than investing into a fund, for example. But those are the 5 routes to the visa as of today. Now, interesting slide as well, because bearing in mind, as I just mentioned, the minimum for an investment is the 500,000. So you've got 500,000 for an investment fund and 500,000 for increasing share capital in a Portuguese company. However, that isn't to say that you need 500,000 at the moment. Of course, you have the donation route if you wish, 250,000 if you wanted to do it with less capital. And also, we've also been talking a lot about one route at the moment, which is, I wouldn't recommend giving away 168,000 euros. There are, of course, ways of keeping that money and seeing a profit. But if you want to do this with minimum capital, there is a way of using just 168,000 of your own money and there's a financing company that will fund the full 500,000 for you over a time frame for a fee of 168,000. And yeah, of course, compared to donating 250,000, it's still what 70-odd thousand euros less than that option. But investment-wise, again, there are investment routes. Again, as of today's date, this will change as time goes on and different investments pop up and disappear and so on. But as of right now, it is possible to invest with, first of all, 315,000 of your own money, where 500,000 is invested on your behalf to qualify for the visa. But you receive an upfront return. So instead of an annual profit for your investment, you can actually get 6 years return paid up front, which is a fixed lump sum of 111,000, with, if you want to, a loan of 74,000. So again, you can make an investment and make money rather than giving it away with just 315,000. Similar route available at 399, again, which is very simple. It's simply an investment of 500,000, but with an upfront return of 101,000, which can be used towards that 500k. And of course, the 500,000 is then the standard entry point, if you like, for all other routes. So I'll always try and keep you up to date on these. Like I said, the entry points will change. It depends what pops up and what changes in the world of Golden Visa investments, but just some kind of key bullet points for you as of right now. Some recent news, some good news, actually. I've got no bad news today. No bad news at all. Not like last year. I had nothing but bad news. This time it's nothing but good news. And the first bit of good news is that the citizenship time has reduced. This was an announcement made a few months back now, but a couple of months back. But the application time now that you're waiting to get your visa will now contribute towards the 5 years that you need to apply for your passport. So previously, it was kind of 5 years from the date of getting the visa, and the waiting times to get the visa have been extensive over recent years. It can take a couple of years to get the visa previously, plus then a fresh 5 years to get the passport. However, it is now 5 years in total from the date that you submit your application. So regardless of how long it takes to get the visa, your citizenship application will be done in 5 years from that date. So that's very good news on that point. This is fantastic news. This is the best news I've had all year round. But the government has given us an early Christmas present by reducing the taxes for the Golden Visa when you come to renew after 2 years. I think I might have forgot to mention that actually. The Golden Visa is a 2-year visa that is renewed every 2 years. And once 5 years have elapsed, of course, you can then apply for your passport. But the cost of the renewals previously have been pretty substantial. And it was actually 3,900 euros per person to renew for another 2 years. You can imagine that's quite a lot of money for a family of 4. And considering there might be 2 renewals during that process. But the good news is, getting to the point that 3,900 has just been reduced. How good is that? It's brilliant. I don't know why they've done it. I'm not going to argue with it. But there you go. A lot less time. It's you'll have legal representation when you do the renewals, but it's a real simple process. Everything's done online now. A couple of years back, it was it was all done in person. So you had to fly into Portugal to, queue up to do the biometrics every 2 years, but super easy now. Yeah, literally no cost at all. So that is good news as well. Okay, so enough about the Golden Visa. That's what it is. Hopefully I've summarized it okay. Again, any questions on what the program is or what it gets, please ask. I'll happy to come back to it in the Q&A. But assuming that, that is something that is of interest and you like the idea of getting a Golden Visa for Portugal, we can now talk through who can qualify for it and how to qualify for it. So first of all, if you already have a European passport, you can leave the room because you don't need a Golden Visa if you already have a EU passport. Neither can you apply for it, should strangely you wish to do so. You also need to have a clean criminal record, or at least a cleanish criminal record. We have had success for clients that have had some blemishes on the file, but nothing's substantial. As long as there's no offences that would have led to jail time in Portugal, had the offence be committed here, then you'll generally be okay. Of course, make an eligible investment in one of the criteria that we just covered. And I've just lost 2 people after saying about the clean criminal record. Hopefully I didn't. Only 2 is not too bad, actually. Everyone else still okay. And then we've got the minimum stay. So the 14 days in every 2-year period is the minimum stay. There's no other criteria. No age requirements. There's no minimum income requirements or particular skills or qualifications. It is those 4 points. If you tick those 4 boxes, congratulations, you can qualify for the visa. Now, as far as your family, can they qualify as well? Now, as part of your application or as part of the main applicant's application, they can include family members, which consists, first of all, of their spouse. So you can be married or unmarried, both are fine as long as you live together. Parents can be included and children can be included as well. And the program is designed to bring 3 generations of family on that same application with the same investment. Just be mindful that if children are over the age of 21, there will be some evidence of dependency required, whether it be proof of enrollment into further study or financial dependency. And the same for parents over the age of, younger than the age of 65. But if they're over 65 and kids are below 21, they are automatically assumed as dependents and therefore do not need to provide any evidence of that. Now, the program that happens behind the scenes, as a brief overview, we do, like I say, we look after everything on your behalf. But myself and my team, first of all, will help you decide on an investment in line with the criteria. We want to make sure that the investment does meet the criteria for the program. And once you've done that, whether it be one as a recommendation from us, or if you've already found the investment that you wish, once we've got that, we can apply for your Portuguese tax numbers and we can start to set up your Portuguese bank account. You'll need both of those before you can make any investments or apply for any visas. Once the bank account's ready to go and the tax numbers are set up, you'll meet, of course, with the lawyers, and the lawyers will complete the power of attorney and go through the investment contracts. And simultaneously, we will be gathering all the documents that we need for the application. Of course, copies of ID, copies of marriage certificates, sometimes birth certificates, copy of criminal record certificate, to just name the main ones. And once it's all in and everything's been done, the due diligence is completed, we've made sure you're not laundering any money, you can transfer the money to your Portuguese bank account and the lawyer will complete the investment and submit your application for the visa. And that's done online with AIMA. And that is the time the clock now starts ticking to get in the passport. It's 5 years from the submission date that we can apply for citizenship. And then really we wait for the biometrics appointment. So everything is done remotely until that point. The only time we physically need you to come to Portugal is for your biometrics. Unfortunately, we can't have your photo taken on your behalf or your fingerprints. So you will need to fly in, whether it be for 1 day or a nice holiday. You'll meet one of our members of staff to accompany you on the day, and you'll have your biometrics done in preparation for your visa card, which looks like this one here at the bottom. And that's it. That is the plan. So, like I said, don't worry too much about all this. We will guide you throughout the process. We'll be holding your hand right throughout the time until when you receive not just the visa, but also should you wish to apply for your passport as well. But just to give you an idea of what's involved at this point. All of that to get to the submission time takes about 2 to 3 months, give or take. The longest part of getting the submission done is setting up the bank account. There's not a lot we can do about the bank account, unfortunately. Depends on the bank that we choose, but some banks take longer than others, but a good guesstimate is 8 to 12 weeks to get everything done and get your application submitted. As far as biometrics, at the moment, a good guideline is around about 18 months in total. It has been longer than that previously, and it is currently longer than that for various reasons, but we've now seen AIMA take over from CEF as a replacement of the Borders Agency. We are starting to see a reduction in the processing time as well. So for those that are starting the process at this point, I'd say about an 18-month wait time for the visa to be issued is a good figure to go off at this point. Okay, and then just as a brief recap on the time frame overall, so like I said, up to 3 months to get the submission of the visa completed, around 18 months to expect the receipt of the visa, and once the visa is issued, it will be valid for 2 years. So in around about 3.5 years from now, you'll have the first renewal, which will then take you up to kind of about 5.5 years from now. Now, of course, at the 5-year point, we apply for permanent residency and your citizenship. So you may not need to do a second renewal now with that law change. But maximum two renewals to be done. But either way, once 5 years has passed from the application date, we'll submit your application for the visa, and at the same time, we'll submit your application for the passport and your permanent residency, on the basis, I nearly forgot them, that you have learned some Portuguese, better than what I can speak Portuguese, for that matter. You don't need to pass a test now. There's 2 options. You can either study Portuguese and pass an exam, and you can do a test at your local centre, or anywhere for that matter, at some point over the next 5 years. Or you can study a course if you don't fancy doing a test. If you're like me and not particularly great with languages, you can now just provide evidence that you have studied for a period of time. And then you can do a course instead. But you have to have one of those 2 before we do the application for your passport. Also on the basis that you've not got yourself into any trouble with the law, you've got to maintain a clean criminal record and, of course, maintain the investment for that time as well. But if you've done those and had the 14 days in each of those 2-year period, we'll get the passport. Okay, simple as that. And then mission complete. That is all. Finito. And then you have full access to live anywhere in Europe. Of course, Portugal is the best part of Europe, in my opinion. I have been to a few. I've lived in a few. But yeah, Portugal, you're going to have access to from the visa issuance. But yeah, at the passport point, you can then, if you're fed up of Portugal, head over to Italy or head over to Spain or wherever else may take your fancy. For those that don't already have visa-free travel worldwide, certainly for myself, it's something that I take for granted. Having a British passport, I already have visa-free travel to the majority of the world. But for some nationalities, a big plus of having the visa and the passport is that it's not just Europe you get access to, but you can actually travel to over 190 countries globally without having to pay for a visa every time that you want to go on holiday. So that's it. That is the program. That's what's involved. That's how you do it. That's how you get there. That's how long it takes. Hopefully I've covered there in enough detail. What happens and how we get there. Okay, so I've seen questions coming in. Thank you for those so far. Welcome to Q&A shortly. I'm just going to run through a few final slides to cover off the basics, and then we'll get stuck into some questions. So let's talk about how to find investments, how to choose investments. What investments are out there. I covered off the criteria before. I'm not going to talk about the donations. I'm not going to talk about setting up a business. I'm going to talk about the investment routes. Of course, if you do want to make a donation, perfectly viable, and we will facilitate your application for that. But there's not a lot of advice as such required on that. But I'm going to get stuck into the 2 investment options on the basis that like I say, you want to keep the money that you have and see that grow at the same time as qualifying for the visa. So option one, you can choose from a qualifying investment or venture capital fund. In order for a fund to qualify, it must meet the following criteria. Okay, and that, of course, there are tens of thousands of funds in the universe, but in order for it to qualify for the visa, it has to be of this nature. First one has to be regulated in Portugal by the Portuguese Securities Commission. It cannot either directly or indirectly invest into real estate. Rule number two. At least 60% of the fund's assets must be within Portugal. Is rule number three. So, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that invests 100% into the US stock market, for example. 60% of the assets have to be in the country. The investment that's made has to be to a minimum of 500,000, which is rule number four. And the fifth rule, which is not specific to funds, but the investment does need to be kept for the full duration until you've got your permanent residency. Any break in the investment will potentially jeopardize the visa application, because we need to have and be able to evidence a full term of investment during that period whilst we do the application for your passport. So that's it. And as long as the fund meets those, you can choose any fund that you like, and you'll be fine. That's it. You just need to check those things. In total, at the moment, there are, give or take, 25 to 30 funds that you will find meet that criteria that will qualify for the program. Some of the key topics that, of course, we're looking out for, and you should be looking out for, some real basic investment kind of basics here, but just be sure that when you're doing your own research, if you are choosing your own funds, always check, that you understand the fund, you understand the security of your capital. I have seen some wild and wacky venture capital funds. I always encourage our clients to share the investment before making any deposits or getting involved with any type of fund, to make sure, first of all, that it's going to qualify, and also that it's secure. We've got to remember that Portugal is not probably the first country that you would choose to invest into unless you was looking for the Portugal Golden Visa. And there are funds and there are venture capital funds out there without much of a track record, without effective management, without transparency, and lack of security as well. But might look great on the surface, but always important to really get into the mechanics of the security. And where you can, try and find a fund or an asset, try and find an investment of some kind that has asset-backed security as well. So if anything does happen to the fund or the fund manager, that you have a second layer of protection, if you like, to fall back on. Be mindful of the time of which your capital is tied up for. Investment funds that qualify for the program, the vast majority of them actually tie up your money for longer than the 6 years that you need it for. So unless you want to be tied into Golden Visa criteria for longer than you need it for, try and make sure that the investment allows the capital to come back as soon as you've got your passport. Be mindful of fees, setup fees, management fees, exit fees. Portuguese funds can be notoriously expensive. I don't mind funds with fees as long as they're worthwhile. Some are not, some are. Of course, understand how the returns are paid. Is it a variable return? Is it a fixed return? Are the returns and the return of capital based on performance of something or the success of a project? It can be, some funds can promise great returns, but there are caveats to those returns and the return of capital. If you are from the US, make sure it's compliant for US investment as well. The US is quite unique, whereas the fund that you invest into must report back to the US under the US regulation, and not all funds are compliant and can be difficult for reporting purposes. And where you can, obviously, see if there's additional incentives on offer as well. There are funds which may have free legal fees, for example, or there might be complimentary stays or extra, just nice to haves alongside the investment. So all important things to consider, but of course, bear in mind, I am fully qualified and experienced in this sector. And the second option is the investment into an existing Portuguese company. Minimum criteria, as we talked about, is 500,000. It's got to be a company that's going to create or maintain jobs, otherwise it won't work. Again, it cannot invest directly or indirectly into real estate, and again, must be kept for the full duration. And yeah, so that's the criteria. That's the criteria for the funds. That's the criteria for the Portuguese company. Those are the only two investment routes to the Golden Visa right now. But there are so many ways to invest, so many industries, so many sectors to get involved with, and ultimately, yeah, it is your decision. We'll always introduce you to good, reputable fund managers, or directly with reputable companies that you can have first and foremost high level of security for your capital. But yeah, if you see things, share them, and yeah, happy to chat them through. And hospitality, as far as hospitality and tourism, really. And this is one example that I've been talking about for a little while just now, and I'm not including any specifics on this, but this is the kind of the blueprint, if you like, where you can for someone that doesn't want to be taking on like I say, high risk investment, something very, very simple with a fixed return, a return of capital at a predetermined time with property held as collateral. Okay. And like I say, this is the kind of the blueprint. So there are, of course, more adventurous funds, but for reference, like I say, the option of a fixed return with an upfront payment can reduce the investment capital needed from the investor that we talked about briefly before. This one in particular has a guaranteed exit in year 6 at the 500,000. So very simple. You have 399 that goes in at the outset. You have the 101 return paid up front, and then you have 500,000 that's returned in year 6, or when you wish to take the 500,000 following your passport. There's no property investment, there's no real estate investment in any way during the visa period. It qualifies for the visa, and you do have the option, if you wish, in year 6 to actually exchange the units that you own in the investment to take ownership of a property for the same price in 6 years from now. So there may be the potential for a capital gain at the end of that time. But at the outset, yeah, very simple, predetermined option within hospitality. Other than that, just ask, really. Like I said, loads of different sectors, loads of investments. They're constantly changing. The criteria is not changing anytime soon, as far as I know, so that's good. But just ask, yeah. And what I just want to kind of highlight is more and more often now I'm seeing people ask for the visa application to be done, having already done their own research. It's quite amazing how much information is out there, whether it be from other individuals or whether it be online, that is just not accurate, or information being given by unsuitable people. And my advice is always just to check with an expert. I like to think of myself as an expert. I've done personally more golden visa applications than anyone else in the country. Like I said, we've done now over 10% of the world's golden visa applications since the program was launched. I'm an expatriate myself, of course, living in Portugal, having gone through the whole process myself. Please do take peace of mind of, the research online. Type my name into Google and see what comes up. Other than that, you can't go far wrong, in my humble opinion. But thanks for listening. I hope that was helpful. I've covered off the basics. I've timed it quite well, actually. So we've got some time now to go through some questions. Before we get stuck into those, yeah, if you do have any personal questions, so if you want to book in some time to speak on a one-to-one basis, please feel free to do so. You can send me an email, or if you wish, you can scan that little QR code and that'll take you through Calendly. And during a meeting, we can go into more personalized and specific detail around any of the topics that I've covered today, including the illustrations for the cost breakdown for your particular family based on your investment requirements, and like I say, any private questions that you have as well. Yeah, contact details there on the screen. Again, always recommend, before jumping into anything, 2 feet first. Share any thoughts, ask any questions, and always speak to an expert. And yeah, of course, any questions on anything we've covered tonight, please ask. And thank you everyone for joining. Hope that was helpful. And I shall look forward to seeing everyone in Portugal very soon.